So the deaths of dozens of young men across 11 states and 25 cities were declared accidental drownings. But now new surveillance video puts them back in the headlines. It's called a smiley-faced killer. That case has become front-page news again. There's a lot more to it than we know. This was abducted in a cargo van. He was driven around Minneapolis for hours and tortured. These are young, highly intelligent, very athletic young men that disappear after the night of drinking very suspiciously. Most of them have GHB, which is how did this drug wind up in the body incapacitated them. They have injuries. They are held for a period of time because there's no decomposition on the body for the amount of time that they're missing. And then they're the positive bodies of water to be recovered later drowned. But most of them doesn't even have water in their lungs. And we knew it wasn't. And it was just, one of those things where you walked out and it was never seen again. I would like Brian to know that if you're out there and you can come home, if I would have known that was the last time I was ever going to see him, I wouldn't let him go. With so many cases of young men going out to bars and/or parties with groups of friends and ending up disappearing for weeks or even months at a time, only to be found in random nearby water sources, deceased under very strange circumstances, there was bound to at some point be a theory that popped up. This would be what we know as the smiley-faced killer or killer's theory. The connections in these cases were discovered and parameters for such cases were set, put together, and advanced. I retired New York City detectives Kevin Gannon, Anthony Duarte, and Dr. Lee Gilbertson. Gilbertson is a criminal justice professor and gang expert at St. Cloud State University. The theory alleges that a number of young men found dead in seemingly random bodies of water across the United States, with specific attention being focused on the Midwestern states between the early 1990s and 2010s, did not in fact drown, but were the victims of foul play. Law enforcement agencies across the country are denying there's any kind of connection, usually with the coroners signing off on the typical got drunk, wandered off, and into water source, and drowned due to intoxication. That's the cause of death. However, these two detectives and a doctor theorized that these specific drownings, with several very specific parameters, which we'll discuss in this documentary, are all connected somehow. They believe all of them to be the work of a serial killer or group of killers who reportedly leave a smiley face in some type of graffiti near the sites where these boys and you young men are said by law enforcement to have drowned accidentally. How many times could there be such a situation near the water, where a young man, after a night of innocent partying and fun, was separated from his group and never seen again until his body was recovered? Before we all agree, it can't be a coincidence anymore. Let's look further into it now, and at the end, you tell me what you think. Is it possible that a killer or a group of killers could be so skilled as to never leave any trace of their existence behind during an alleged span of 20 or more years? No forensic evidence, no physical evidence, not one single shred of evidence of foul play. Well, not quite. Let's start with the case of Christopher Jenkins in 2002. Christopher Jenkins was a university student in Minnesota State. He decided to go out drinking at a bar in Minneapolis on Halloween night with a group of friends and his girlfriend. The crew ended up at the Lone Tree Bar, which is allegedly in a sketchy part of town. Chris dressed up as a Native American that night. It was in a full costume. While reports varied greatly, the story told, the most was that, for some reason or another, an intoxicated Chris was asked to leave the bar that night, so he was basically thrown out and decided to walk home alone. Again, since he was with his girlfriend and a large group of friends that night, it's unknown why he was walking home alone. Many say it's what he wanted to do to blow off some steam, as he was angry for being thrown out of the bar. A bouncer, who remembered asking Chris to leave, and also walking him out the door, reported he had taken a left on Hennepin Avenue. He had left his wallet, phone, and jacket behind when he exited the bar and walked into the freezing cold Minnesota night. Some people claim Chris left on his own that night. However, that doesn't make much sense if he left all those things behind the bar. Chris Jenkins would be found 4 months later in the Hennepin River in the Horseshoe Dam area. His Native American costume was still completely intact, and his legs and arms are crossed. He was also found with some hair in his hands, and it's been a huge controversy over whether or not the hair found clutched in the death grip of his fingers was his own or someone else's. Some are adamant that it was his own hair, while others are just as meme it was someone else's. Upon taking another look at the autopsy, it was determined that the only way his body would have been found in the position it was in was if there had been a struggle. Despite this, his case was labeled as he took his own life. In 2006, however, there was a new police chief in Indianapolis named Tim Dolan, who, upon a closer look, reopened the case as a homicide and started immediately reinvestigating it. Dolan went so far as to hold a conference and apologized to the family for not investigating Chris's case as a homicide all along. There were just too many unanswered questions. The sticking point for many who believed from the very beginning it was a homicide, or who came around to that opinion later on, was the hair found in his hands. Whose was it? It was also reported upon further examination of the toxicology report that Chris had nowhere near enough alcohol in his system to be considered inebriated enough to not be able to walk or talk on his own. In fact, it's been said that most likely, if they hadn't found the GHB in his system, he may not have been impaired at all. Upon further investigation, and what was now being considered a homicide, a witness turned up who had stated he had been drinking at the same bar a couple of months prior to Chris having gone missing there, and he claims he was extremely sick and inebriated after only consuming his first drink of the night. He also claims that, quote, a few men, unquote, tried to put him in a car, but his friends found him before this could happen and saved him. Were these men just good Samaritans, trying to give what seemed to be a very intoxicated man a ride home? If that's the case, then why have they not yet come forward and made themselves known, to the very least get rid of some of the confusion regarding the matter? Were these the actual smiley face killers, or at least a few of them?